Have you ever felt like you're sprinting full speed on a treadmill, exhausted, worn out, only to look up and realize you're standing exactly where you started? We live in an age that worships breakthroughs. We set grand goals, bold resolutions to change our lives. We want a total overhaul, a 180-degree revolution, and we want it right now. We hunt for the eureka moment that flips everything overnight. But reality is often unforgiving. The initial burst of motivation flares brilliantly and then quickly burns out, leaving us with a sense of failure and doubt. Most people stay obsessed with dramatic overhauls. Meanwhile, off in a quiet corner, the small, almost invisible improvements of everyday life are quietly compounding, patiently accumulating, until they become results that transform an entire lifetime. We often overlook them. They're too small. They're too ordinary. But try imagining this for a moment. Imagine looking back 12 months from today. You don't recognize yourself because of some earth-shattering event. Instead, you realize that the small, almost boring choices, made consistently day after day, have quietly but surely changed the entire trajectory of your finances, your health, and the depth of your thinking. What if the key to lasting change isn't a leap, but a single step? What if 1% of effort each day, not 100% of effort in a single day, is what truly makes the difference? Paradoxically, the answer doesn't lie in some grand future, but in the small present. It lives in a powerful philosophy, one that has quietly reshaped entire industries and changed countless lives, not with a thunderous bang, but with a steady whisper. Today, we're going to explore the philosophy of Kaizen. You may have heard it under the name the 1% rule, a principle that seems simple on the surface about continuous improvement. But let's be clear from the very start. This is not the latest productivity hack, and it is certainly not a fanciful promise blown out of proportion on the internet. In fact, Kaizen is the antidote to hype. It is the complete opposite, the direct response to what we might call the overnight success culture dominating our world. Why does this matter now more than ever? Especially right now. We live in an age of relentless comparison. We're bombarded with stories of quantum leaps, of people who seem to get everything in the blink of an eye. Social media paints the illusion that if your progress isn't fast, flashy, and share-worthy, then it isn't progress. The pressure to make massive, immediate changes is immense. And what is the result of that pressure? We feel paralyzed. We procrastinate because the mountain we set before ourselves is too high to even begin climbing. We start with 110% energy on the first day of the new year, and then we burn out and fall back to zero just 2 weeks later. Kaizen steps into this very chaos as a voice of reason, of practicality. It offers another path, a solid, grounded path. It's designed for busy people in the real world, people who don't have the time or energy for impossible overhauls, but who crave real, sustainable progress. This philosophy does not demand that you turn your life upside down. It doesn't ask you to become a different person by tomorrow. It simply asks you to make your life 1% better than it was today. This is a philosophy that respects the reality of psychological resistance. It understands that radical change is often unsustainable because our brains are wired to resist it. But small, consistent improvements can slip past that resistance. It's not about perfection, it's about progress. Throughout this video, we'll go deeper than a definition. We'll decode why Kaizen is so psychologically effective. We'll explore its core principles, from the incredible power of the 1% rule and how it defeats procrastination, to the crucial difference between setting goals and building systems. Systems that actually produce real results, without the hype. We'll look at how you can design your environment to make these small improvements almost automatic. And most importantly, we'll map out a clear roadmap for you to start applying this wisdom, not next year, not next month, but today, so you can create the most sustainable and meaningful change in your life. To truly grasp the transformative power of Kaizen, we have to journey back to where it was born, not in a seminar room or a motivational speech, but out of the ashes of devastation. In its original form, the philosophy of Kaizen emerged in post-war Japan. Picture that context. A nation struggling to redefine itself, an economy in ruins, where every resource was desperately scarce and the future painfully uncertain. In such harsh conditions, survival did not depend on bold, giant leaps, because there simply weren't the resources for high-risk, all-in gambles. Survival depended on relentless optimization, on squeezing the most out of every little thing they had. It was from this soil of necessity that Kaizen rose as a practical system. It was an unwavering commitment to steady, repeatable improvements. In factories fighting to rebuild, engineers and workers were empowered to search for small, almost imperceptible ways to make processes better, safer, more efficient, even if only a little. They weren't trying to reinvent the wheel. They were trying to make it spin 0.1% more smoothly tomorrow than it does today. The result of this collective commitment to micro-improvements over decades was nothing short of an economic miracle. The quality and efficiency born from this humble method became the global gold standard. Very quickly, world-class organizations outside Japan, from automotive giants to cutting-edge tech companies, began to study and adopt it. They recognized that Kaizen wasn't just a technique, it was a culture, a foundational mindset. But the story doesn't end at the assembly line. The most beautiful evolution of Kaizen, and the reason we're talking about it today, is its migration out of factories and into our personal lives. The principles that helped rebuild a nation turn out to be the very principles that can help rebuild a person. Beyond the factory floor, Kaizen has become a profound personal philosophy. It is the acknowledgement that your life, your health, your work, your relationships, each of them is a process. And like any process, they can be improved. It invites us to drop the pressure of changing everything all at once, and instead to make small, verifiable changes. It's you asking yourself a simple question. What is the smallest thing I can do today to improve this behavior, to optimize this habit, to produce slightly better results over time? It's about turning your life from a rigid plan into a living experiment. And at the core of that experiment lies the first and most foundational principle. A principle so simple, we often overlook its true power. And that foundational principle, the beating heart of Kaizen, is the 1% rule. Its definition is astonishingly simple. It's the commitment to improve, even by roughly 1%, every day or every week, in a specific area you've chosen. But the most important part of this definition lies in the second clause. It's about focusing entirely on the process rather than obsessing over a dramatic outcome. It's shifting your attention away from the distant finish line and placing your whole mind on the step right in front of you. In a world that craves instant results, this can sound almost like a step backward. It lacks the fireworks of a personal revolution, but don't mistake its simplicity for weakness. Beneath that modest surface lies a psychological and mathematical mechanism so powerful it's almost unfair. Here's why it works, and why, over the long run, it outperforms aggressive attempts at change. First, and most important, Kaizen disarms fear. Why do most of our big resolutions fail? Because grand, ambitious goals, I'll write a book, I'll run a marathon, I'll overhaul my entire diet, trigger a primitive system in our brain. They activate the amygdala, the brain's fear center. When faced with a colossal task, your brain flips into fight or flight mode. It perceives massive change as a threat and will do everything it can to resist. The result? Procrastination, overwhelm, perfectionist paralysis. You don't even start because the mental price tag feels too high. Kaizen is a stealth strategy. It's too small to be detected. A 1% improvement, like writing 50 words, walking for 5 minutes, or skipping a spoonful of sugar in your coffee, is too tiny to be labeled a threat. It flies under the radar of fear. It reduces the friction of starting to near zero. It gives perfectionism no chance to speak up, because you're not trying to be perfect. You're just trying to be 1% better. It lets you begin before your brain even realizes you're making a change. Second, Kaizen harnesses the power of compound interest. We're terrible at intuiting exponential growth. Our instincts think in straight lines. 1% today seems meaningless. 1% tomorrow, the same. For weeks or even months, the results are almost invisible. This is called the valley of disappointment, and it's where most people quit. But 1% better each day doesn't add up to 365% better after a year. The power of compounding means 1.01 to the 365th power. The result is that you're nearly 38 times better. Conversely, if you get 1% worse each day, 0.99 to the 365th power, you end up at nearly zero. Kaizen is an act of faith in this mathematical law. It's the patience to keep taking small, unglamorous actions through the valley of disappointment, knowing that on the other side the growth curve will soar. It accumulates quietly, the way small savings compound, until one day you look back and realize you've crossed an unthinkable distance. And third, Kaizen rewires your motivation system. Big goals have feedback loops that are long and punishing. You work for 6 months with nothing to show, and your motivation drains away. This leads to burnout. Kaizen provides fast, almost immediate feedback loops. With Kaizen, winning isn't the finish line in the future. Winning is completing today's 1%. Did you write those 50 words? That's a win. Did you take that 5-minute walk? That's a win. Each small action delivers a tiny dopamine boost, a confirmation that you're on the right path. This gradually reprograms your brain. You stop seeking satisfaction from the result and begin finding joy in the process itself. You become addicted to consistent action rather than to the illusion of some giant future reward. This is the ultimate antidote to burnout and perfectionism. It turns progress from a stressful sprint into a sustainable, lifelong walk. That's the theory, and it's psychologically compelling. But the philosophy of Kaizen, as we've seen from its origins, isn't an abstract thought exercise. It's a practical system forged in the real world. So, what does the 1% rule actually look like when applied to the messiness of everyday life? It doesn't look like a revolution. It looks like actions that are almost invisible. Consider health, a domain where fresh start resolutions most often die, usually before January even ends. The goal, "I'll go to the gym 5 days a week," is intimidating. It demands big changes in time, energy, and identity. It triggers every fear alarm we just discussed. And when you miss a day, the sense of failure can derail the whole effort. But what if you apply Kaizen? A 1% commitment could be, "I'll take a 10-minute walk right after dinner." That's it. 10 minutes. It's too small to fail. It's too small for your brain to bother objecting. It's too small to procrastinate. You just lace up your shoes and step out the door. You do it. Day 1, you feel good. Day 2, it gets a little easier. Day 3, it starts to feel familiar. You've just completed a fast feedback loop. You said you'd do a thing, and you did it. That's a small win, a dopamine hit. The first week passes. You're not burnt out. You don't feel like you've sacrificed anything. But you've accumulated 70 minutes of movement. And now something remarkable starts to happen. Consistency creates momentum. The next step arrives naturally, not as a leap, but as another 1% progression. Maybe I can walk 12 minutes. Maybe I'll take a slightly steeper route. And then habit stacking appears. In the last 2 minutes of that walk, maybe I'll add some stretches, or do a few light strength moves when I get home. Notice what happened. You didn't try to become an athlete. You were just trying to walk for 10 minutes. And now, without resistance or burnout, you've built a sustainable health habit. Or consider our work. We often feel buried under mountains of repetitive tasks and endless distractions. The vague goal of becoming more productive is a recipe for overwhelm. Instead of trying to overhaul my entire work system in a single weekend, the Kaizen commitment is, this week I'll find one 1% bottleneck and fix it. Maybe it's creating an email template for a reply you find yourself typing 10 times a day. Maybe it's automating a simple report, or writing a clear checklist for a complex process that often trips you up. This action might take 15 or 20 minutes. It doesn't require a strategy meeting. It isn't flashy. But the feedback loop is immediate. The next day, you save 3 minutes. The day after that, the same. That tiny change by itself seems insignificant. But add it up. One small workflow fix each week. By the end of the quarter, you've not only saved minutes, you've banked hours of focused work. More importantly, you've changed your relationship with your work from passive reaction to proactive improvement. In both scenarios, the real change isn't the external result, not the 70 minutes of walking or the hours saved. The real change is internal. You've proven to yourself that you are a person who acts, a person who improves. You're building a new identity, 1% at a time. This is how the 1% rule starts laying the foundation. But to turn these actions from conscious effort into nearly automatic behavior, we need to explore the second core principle. It's the pivotal mindset shift that moves us from merely hoping for outcomes to designing a machine that produces them. We've seen how the 1% rule, those small, almost invisible actions, are the bricks that build change. They're essential, but by themselves, they're just loose bricks. To build a fortress sturdy enough to withstand life's chaos, you need something to bind them together. You need a blueprint. This is where we enter Kaizen's second core principle, a mindset shift that may be even more powerful than the 1% rule, the conviction that systems matter more than goals. From childhood, most of us are programmed to obsess over goals. What grade do you want? Which university do you want to get into? How much money do you want to make? We focus entirely on the what, a specific finish line, a future outcome. Kaizen and the philosophy of continuous improvement poses a different and far deeper question. What is your system to achieve it? A system is the architecture behind your behavior. It isn't the outcome. It's the process. It's the intentional design of habits, environments, and triggers that make those 1% improvements nearly automatic. Put simply, a system is what makes the right action the path of least resistance. Now, why does this matter so much? Why is there such a fundamental difference between a goal-focused person and a system-focused person? Let's be clear. Goals aren't useless. They're the compass. They set direction. They tell us where north is. They provide a vision, a motivating reason to begin the journey. But, and this is the crux of the entire philosophy, you can't live at north. You can only live on the ship that takes you there. And it's systems that steer daily behavior. Systems are the ship. Systems are the rowing, the rigging, the sails, the things you do today, regardless of how you feel, regardless of how far the finish line still is. Goal obsession has two deadly psychological traps. First, it creates a binary win or lose mindset. When you set a goal like run a marathon, you're subconsciously telling yourself, I'm not a runner yet. I'll be a runner after I cross the finish line. You defer happiness and recognition until you hit an arbitrary point in the future. That means 99% of your time, the entire training process, you're living in a state of not yet successful. You're living in constant deficit. Your motivation is continually tested because you're not there. A system is the exact opposite. A system frees you from waiting. Your system isn't run a marathon. Your system is lace up and run for 30 minutes every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. The moment you complete that 30-minute run, you've succeeded. Immediately. Today. You've won. You don't have to wait 6 months to feel like a winner. You get an instant positive feedback loop. That builds momentum not from hope, but from evidence. The second trap of goals is the question, what happens after you achieve it? We've all seen this. Someone trains like crazy for a goal, hits it, and then stops. The drive that pushed them evaporates with the finish line. They quickly slide back into old habits. This is why we see the yo-yo effect in dieting and training. Goals, by nature, are temporary. A system, when designed well, is permanent. You don't finish a system, you live it. It isn't about achieving an outcome, it's about becoming a certain kind of person. Someone whose system is read 10 pages every night doesn't do it to finish a book. They do it because they are a reader. Someone whose system is spend 15 minutes tidying every morning doesn't do it to have a perfect home. They do it because they are an organized person. Goals are an event. Systems are an identity. And this is where Kaizen delivers real, no-hype results. Hype fixates on big outcomes, on goals. Lose 30 pounds in 30 days. Become a millionaire in a year. Real results come from a boring, repeatable system, executed with unwavering consistency. The Kaizen philosophy is, at its core, an absolute devotion to process. It understands that you can't directly control outcomes. You can't control whether you lose 20 pounds. Your body is too complex. You can't control whether you get promoted. There are too many external variables. But you can always control your system. You can always control whether you eat a healthy meal today. You can always control whether you put in an hour of focused work today. The question is no longer, how do I achieve that big goal? The question becomes, how do I design a system that makes the right behavior inevitable? And the answer to that question leads us to the most practical part of this philosophy: how to turn your environment into your most powerful ally. So, if a system is the machine designed to produce results, how do we, as the engineers of our own lives, begin to build it? The answer, surprisingly, doesn't lie in willpower or iron discipline. It lies in one of the most fundamental truths about human behavior. To a large extent, we are products of our environment. And because we can control our environment, we can control our system. The first practical principle for building a Kaizen system is environmental design. Consider a common aim. I want to practice guitar more. Most people rely on willpower. I'll practice tonight. But after a long day, the guitar sits snug in its hard case, tucked under the bed or in a closet corner. That tiny layer of friction, having to pull it out, unzip the case, is often enough for your willpower to surrender to the TV remote. Environmental design in Kaizen says, don't fight laziness, eliminate it. Make the right action easier than doing nothing. Put the guitar on a stand in the living room. Place it right in your path, where you'll see it every time you sit down. Then the barrier vanishes. You don't have to decide to practice. You simply pass by, see it, and pick it up, even if only for 5 minutes. The system does the heavy mental lifting for you. The same holds true for exercise habits. The goal morning workout doesn't fail at 6 o'clock a.m. It fails at 5:59 a.m., when you're groggy and still deciding what to wear, where your socks are. The winning system is laying out your workout clothes the night before. When the alarm rings, you don't need to think. The clothes are there, ready. The system makes the decision for you, and systems aren't just physical. They're temporal. The aim, I'll be more focused, collapses when your calendar is empty, and anyone can drop in a meeting. The winning system is creating default calendar blocks for deep work. You protect your time in advance. You build a default space for focus. Your environment, your calendar, now works for you, not against you. This environmental design leads us to a twin concept that's just as powerful: friction tuning. Your life is a sequence of actions, and each action carries a certain level of friction, the difficulty of starting it. Kaizen's systems philosophy is simple. Become a master engineer of friction. Deliberately and relentlessly make the good easier and the bad harder. How to make things easy. If you want to eat healthier, your system isn't have iron will at the supermarket. Your system is setting up a one-click reorder of healthy groceries. You put your staple foods on auto order. The healthiest choice becomes the effortless choice. And the reverse, how to make things hard. This is the part we often skip. Want to stop doom scrolling or impulse shopping? Don't rely on willpower to just check for 5 minutes. That's a battle you've already lost. Instead, tune the friction. Log out of impulse buy apps after each use. Remove them from your home screen. Put your phone in another room after 9 p.m. Notice how powerful this is. You make a one-time effort. Set up the system to reap the benefits hundreds of times. Automatic behavior. You're turning laziness, the biggest enemy of goals, into the greatest ally of systems. By designing the environment and tuning friction, we've built the ship. We've turned discrete 1% improvements into a working machine. But there's one last question, crucial for ensuring this ship not only runs, but sails in the right direction. How do we know our system is actually producing 1% improvements? How do we sustain motivation when the change is still too small to see with the naked eye? This brings us to the third core principle, the art of seeing the invisible. We have the bricks, the 1% rule. We have the blueprint and the machine, systems and environment. We've built a ship, stripped away unnecessary friction, and prepared it to set sail. But a ship, no matter how perfectly designed, will drift aimlessly without navigation tools. A system, no matter how automatic, will never improve without feedback. How do we know whether our 1% efforts are actually making a difference? How do we sustain motivation when the finish line is still far away, hazy on the horizon? This is where we arrive at the third and final pillar of personal Kaizen, the principle of measure what matters. Let's be clear, this is not obsessive tracking, over-analysis, or spinning up a labyrinth of spreadsheets that only make you more stressed. It's the opposite. This is the art of minimalist, intentional measurement. Its core definition is track one leading indicator for each area, not vanity metrics. This distinction is critical. It's the difference between durable motivation and quick burnout. Vanity metrics are outcome measures. They're lagging indicators. Examples: total pounds lost, money in the savings account, number of social media followers. They are the results of your actions. What's their fatal flaw? They change very, very slowly. You can have a perfect week, 100% adherence to your eating and training system, and step on the scale at week's end only to see no movement, or even an uptick from water retention. And what happens in that moment? Your mind screams, "This isn't working. All this effort is pointless." Your motivation shatters. You sink back into the valley of disappointment we talked about in Part 4, and this time you quit. You measured the wrong thing. Leading indicators, on the other hand, are process measures. They track whether you adhered to your system. Examples: minutes read, steps taken, minutes of focused work. You have 100% direct control over leading indicators. You can't control whether you lose a pound, but you have absolute control over whether you complete a 30-minute walk. Because Kaizen worships process, it requires us to measure process. When you shift what you measure from outcomes to process, two powerful things happen. First, your motivation becomes sustainable because you create wins every day. Humans have a basic psychological need to see progress. Visible progress sustains motivation. If your goal is write a book, 80,000 words, and that's what you measure, you'll live at 0% for a very long time. But if your leading indicator is write 250 words, then the moment you hit word 250, you've reached 100% of today's target. You've won. The simple act of marking an X on the calendar, logging 250 in your journal, delivers a small dopamine hit. It's tangible, undeniable proof that you kept your promise to yourself. You're no longer hoping for progress. You're seeing it. Daily. You're building a streak of wins. And your motivation comes not from a distant goal, but from not wanting to break that streak. Second, you gain the ability to fine-tune your system quickly. This is the improvement in continuous improvement. Kaizen isn't a rigid plan. It's a living experiment. It helps you refine your 1% changes quickly. How do you know whether your 1% tweak works? How do you know if your system is optimal? By looking at the data. Suppose your system is meditate 10 minutes every morning right after waking. You track the leading indicator, minutes meditated. You notice that on weekdays you hit 10 out of 10, but on Saturdays and Sundays you always hit 0. The data is talking to you. It's not saying you're a failure or undisciplined. It's saying, this system, in this environment, weekends, is breaking down. Without measurement, you just feel frustrated with yourself. With measurement, you can refine. You make another 1% improvement to the system. Okay, on weekends, I'll try meditating 10 minutes right after my morning coffee instead of immediately upon waking. Measurement turns failure from a personal verdict into an invaluable data point. It removes emotion and judgment from the process. It lets you operate like a scientist in the laboratory of your own life, continually adjusting small variables to optimize your machine. Measuring what matters isn't about self-punishment. It's about self-illumination. It's about making invisible progress visible and turning fuzzy guesses into actionable data. It's the final piece that transforms those 1% actions into a self-learning, self-improving, truly sustainable system. So, what does measuring what matters look like in practice? Is it some complicated app or a data dashboard that takes more time to maintain than the habit itself? No. The spirit of Kaizen is simplicity, eliminating waste, and that applies to how we track too. We're not building a complex monitoring system. We're creating a minimalist, effective tool, a weekly scorecard. This could be nothing more than a sticky note, a simple note on your phone, or a small notebook. The tool isn't what matters. Clarity is. And on this scorecard, you don't track 20 metrics. You pick just one leading indicator for each area you're focusing on. Let's look at 3 common areas. For health, your outcome goal might be lose weight or feel more energetic. That's hard to measure and slow to change. Instead, your scorecard's leading indicator could be as simple as number of protein-complete meals or step count. You don't need both. Choose one thing you believe will, if followed, make the result take care of itself. For mind, your outcome goal is become wiser or reduce stress. That's vague. What's your leading indicator? It could be pages read, even just 5 pages. Or, if you're building a mindfulness habit, it could be journaling streak. You're not measuring the quality of what you write. You're simply measuring that you sat down and wrote. For work. The outcome goal is get promoted or ship the big project. You can't control that day to day, but you can control your leading indicator. Number of deep work blocks completed. Now you have a simple scorecard. Each day takes 10 seconds to mark an X or jot down a number. Today, 8 out to 200 steps. Today, read 10 pages. Today, 2 deep work blocks. The data starts to accumulate. You're making the invisible visible. But data, if unreviewed, is just noise. And that brings us to the core action in the personal Kaizen loop. It doesn't happen daily, it happens weekly. It's an appointment you set with yourself, the Sunday review. This isn't a self-judgment session. It's a scientist's analysis. You spend 15 minutes, look over last week's scorecard, and run a simple 3-step protocol. Keep, tweak, or remove. You look at pages read and see 7 out of 7 X's. This system is working perfectly. Low friction, clear reward. Decision, keep. Don't change it, protect it. You look at step count and see you hit your target 5 out of 7 days, but slipped on Wednesday and Thursday. Decision, tweak. Instead of blaming yourself, you ask a simple Kaizen question. Why? You realize, those are my office days. Your current system, walk after work, doesn't fit that environment. So you make a 1% system tweak. Next Wednesday and Thursday, the new experiment is, take a 20-minute walk at lunch. You look at a new habit you tried to add, 15 minutes of language study, and you see 1 out of 7. The system flopped. Decision, remove, for now. Friction is too high. Maybe 15 minutes is a 10% jump, not a 1% step. You pull it off the scorecard to focus on what's working, or you shrink it to nearly fail-proof. I'll just open the app for 1 minute. This is the real beauty of the philosophy. Kaizen isn't a rigid plan carved in stone. It's a living experiment. A rigid plan shatters the moment life. An urgent meeting, a sick child, cuts in. And when the plan breaks, we feel guilty, label ourselves failures, and quit altogether. An experiment can't fail. It can only produce data. When you miss a day, you haven't fallen off the wagon. You haven't broken a perfect streak. You've just created a valuable data point for your Sunday review. You've just discovered a weak spot in your system, a friction point to be tuned. Guilt gets replaced by curiosity. Now we have all 3 pillars. Tiny 1% steps, a system to automate them, and a measurement loop to refine them. The only question left is, how do we start? Not next year. Today. How do we weave all of this into a concrete action plan? We've taken a full journey. We've understood why big leaps fail, and why the 1% rule wins psychologically. We've discovered that a well-designed system will always beat a vague goal. And we've learned the art of making invisible progress visible by measuring what matters. All those pieces, the bricks, the blueprint, and the dashboard, now sit neatly before you. The question is no longer what is Kaizen, or why does it work? The only practical question left is, so how will I start on Monday morning? This is where we turn this ancient philosophy into a practical plan for modern life. We won't try to change everything. That's not the Kaizen way. Instead, we'll launch a controlled experiment. Call it your 30-day Kaizen sprint. But don't let the word sprint fool you. This isn't a frenzied race. It's a sprint in mindset, a focused 30-day window not to change your entire life, but to successfully build and test your first improvement machine. The goal of these 30 days isn't to get six-pack abs or finish a novel. The goal is that on day 31, you can look back and say, I built a new, sustainable system. I proved I can do it. And now I have a formula I can repeat in any other area of my life. Here's the step-by-step plan, week by week. Week 1. Foundation, selection, and commitment. This is the toughest week mentally, not because of heavy work, but because it demands absolute restraint. Step 1. Choose one domain and one 1% habit, not health, work, and relationships. Just one. Be ruthless in your choice. Suppose you choose the mind domain. Next, choose one core 1% habit. Don't pick, I will meditate for 30 minutes. That's a goal, not a 1% habit. Your 1% habit is, I will meditate. Step 2. Define the cue, the 2-minute action, and a clear tracking tool. This is where we activate the system. Cue. When will this new habit happen? You must anchor it to an existing, unbreakable routine. Not in the morning, but right after I set my first cup of coffee on the table. That cue is specific and non-negotiable. 2-minute action. This is the classic 2-minute rule. Whatever your habit is, shrink it down to 120 seconds. I will meditate becomes, I will sit down and meditate for 2 minutes. I will go to the gym becomes, I will put on my workout clothes and do 10 push-ups. I will write a book becomes, I will open the document and write for 2 minutes. Why? You can't fail. You can't say, I don't have 2 minutes. This neutralizes every excuse and every bit of mental resistance. Tracking tool. Make it visible. Grab a wall calendar and a red pen. Each day you complete your 2 minutes, mark a big X. This is your scorecard. Week 1. Goal. Not to become a meditation master. Your goal is to earn 7 X marks. That's it. You're training consistency, not intensity. You're proving to yourself that you can show up every day. Week 2. Optimization. System design. You've shown up for 7 days. You've got momentum. Now you'll act like an engineer. You'll make the system virtually fail-proof. Week 2. Task. Optimize friction. This week, you add nothing new. You only make week 1's action 10 times easier. This is where you apply the environmental design we discussed in Part 7. Prepare the environment. If the habit is 2 minutes of meditation, then in week 2, you'll set your meditation cushion right next to the coffee table the night before. Everything is ready. You don't have to look for it. If the habit is push-ups, your workout clothes are set out. If it's writing, your laptop is open to that document. Pre-solve obstacles. What could block your 2 minutes? My child wakes up? I have an early meeting. Week 2 is when you handle those if-thens. If my child wakes up, I'll do it in the bathroom. If I have an early meeting, I'll set my alarm 5 minutes earlier to get it done. Automate reminders. If the natural cue, the coffee cup, isn't enough yet, add a guardrail. Set an unmissable phone alarm named 2-minute meditation. Week 2. Goal: drive the starting friction to almost zero. You want to reach the point where not doing the habit is harder than doing it. You're reinforcing the foundation. Week 3. Stacking. The first compound. You've been consistent. Week 1. You've made it easy. Week 2. Your 2-minute habit is now nearly automatic. Your brain no longer resists it. Now, and only now, you've earned the right to add. Week 3. Task. Add exactly one supporting habit. This is called habit stacking. You don't necessarily increase the old habit, e.g. from 2 to 5 minutes. A stronger Kaizen move is to attach a new 1% habit directly after the already successful habit. Example: right after I complete my 2 minutes of meditation, old habit, I will open my journal and write one sentence about something I'm grateful for, new habit. Example: right after I put the book down, after reading 1 page, I will drink a full glass of water. Critical requirement: keep total time under 15 minutes per day. This is your safety rail. It prevents the ambition creep, Kaizen's #1 enemy. Your entire new stacked system, E to G, 2 minutes of meditation plus 1 minute of journaling, must still feel tiny, non-threatening, and almost laughably easy. You're still in 1% territory. Week 3 goal: successfully link 2 small habits, proving that your system not only holds but can grow. Week 4. Review and refine. The improvement loop. You've built a small system. You've tested expanding it. Now it's time to be the scientist, to conduct the Sunday review we discussed in Part 9, but for the full 30 days. Week 4. Task: review the data, upgrade one bottleneck, and lock in what works. Review the data. Look at your 28 to 30-day calendar. How many X marks do you have? 25 out of 30, 15 out of 30. Be honest. The data doesn't judge, it informs. Identify precisely which days you missed. Upgrade the bottleneck. This is the core of Kaizen. Find one primary reason you failed. Not, I'm lazy. It's a system reason. I missed 3 Tuesdays because that's the day I have to take my child to school early. Aha, that's a bottleneck. You found the weak point. Now, you upgrade DAW. Your 1% improvement in week 4 isn't about the habit. It's about the system. New experiment. On Tuesdays, the system, meditation plus writing, will happen in the evening at 9 p.m. instead of in the morning. You're refining your machine. Lock it in. At the end of week 4, the sprint is over. Look at your system, e.g., 2 minutes of meditation plus 1 sentence of journaling right after coffee. It worked. It's been tested. It's been refined. It's no longer an experiment. It's locked in. It's your new baseline. It is officially part of who you are. And then what? After 30 days, you don't have an entirely new life. You have something far more valuable. A smoothly running machine, proven to produce change. You've mastered the improvement process. And now you have two options. Start a new 30-day sprint for a completely different domain, E to G, health, applying this exact 4-week formula. Return to week 3 with your current system and add another 1% improvement, E to G. Okay, now I'm ready to try 5 minutes of meditation. This is how real change happens. Not with a bang, but with patient, methodical placement of one brick at a time, day after day, week after week. No hype, just results. And that is how your change machine is built, one step at a time. But even after hearing this very practical 30-day plan, I know there's still a skeptical voice inside us. It's a voice forged by a world obsessed with instant outcomes, a world that promises quantum leaps. That voice is whispering, or maybe shouting, but this is too slow. A month just to build a 2-minute habit? I don't have time for that. I need change right now. This is the most reasonable objection, and also the most common misunderstanding. Our answer must be direct and clear, and it's right there in this video's title, No Hype. The truth is, Kaizen is the firm acknowledgement that speed without stability almost never lasts. Most of us are victims of the boom and bust cycle. We throw ourselves into a harsh diet or a 7 days a week training schedule with 110% energy. We keep it up for 10 days. We burn out, and we quit entirely for the next 6 months. That's artificial speed, an illusion of progress. Kaizen is the opposite. It may be frustratingly slow at the start, but it never stops. The steady power of compounding will always beat the flare-up of short-lived motivation. Then the second skepticism rises. Life is messy. Your plan sounds great in theory, but what happens when I get sick? When my boss drops an urgent project on me? When my child won't sleep? This system will collapse like everything else. This is perhaps Kaizen's most human and most powerful beauty. It isn't a rigid, brittle system that demands perfection. Kaizen expects failure. It's designed with the understanding that life will intrude. A rigid plan, when broken, leads to guilt and total collapse. A Kaizen system, when interrupted, does not. It's designed to be restartable. You don't fall off the wagon. You don't go back to square one. You simply missed a data point. And tomorrow, you don't need to catch up. You just start again at the smallest possible step. And 1% is always doable. It removes judgment and replaces it with patience. It isn't a straight road. It's a steadfast one. It isn't a straight road. It's a steadfast one. We've reached the end of our journey through the philosophy of Kaizen, and perhaps the deepest truth we've discovered together today is this. Big change isn't a miracle. It's maintenance. We've been taught to chase a seismic event, a metamorphosis that will change everything. In reality, the most profound and sustainable transformation is found in the humble, daily, repeated actions no one sees. Real-life change is those consistent 1% choices, carefully measured so we can see our wins, and relentlessly refined so we can adapt to the chaotic realities of life. It's a commitment to process rather than an obsession with outcomes. It's the patience to trust compounding, even when we're in the valley of disappointment and can't yet see the curve rising. This is the promise of the philosophy. Not an overnight revolution, but real results, no hype. So stop waiting for the perfect moment or a gigantic wave of motivation. Trade the pursuit of tomorrow's perfection for the power of today's 1% progress. Choose one domain. Choose one habit, so small it feels almost ridiculous. And start today. The final question isn't how much you can do or how fast you can go. The real question, the only one that matters right now, is where will your first 1% go this week? Remember, real-life change isn't a dramatic event. It's the result of countless patient 1% actions, repeated every day. You now understand the power of focusing on systems over goals, and you have a concrete strategy to start building your own improvement machine. You have a clear roadmap, no more guesswork. But as you begin applying Kaizen, you'll quickly encounter the biggest barrier: distraction. How can you sustain 1% improvement when your attention is constantly being pulled in 100 directions? That's exactly why I've prepared the next video. If you're ready to protect your most precious asset, your focus, and truly master those 1% steps, click the video now, appearing on the left side of your screen. How to actually control your mind, not the world. Marcus Aurelius and Stoicism, mind control. And of course, if you found real value in deep dives like this and want to walk with me on this journey of growth, hit like and subscribe right now. Don't forget to ring the notification bell, because our next video will explore a topic I believe will change how you see relationships. Today's exploration is only the beginning. Hold on to that calm, steady focus. Follow along and support the channel. I'll see you in the next video.